time since the last time I did one of these in this capacity, but here I am. And it's really been a really overdue stream. And I have a lot of stuff to talk about. And mainly being given a quick update, trying to catch up on a lot of the movies that I've been able to see up to this point and giving my 2 cents along with everybody else. It's just, man, what a year it has been. What a 2021 it has been so far. And anyway, enough about all that. The nitty gritty. Obviously, I am getting things prepared to start up my stream. Uh, and what's up to my boy Amarak and say you feel necky without your Twitch emotes, dude. Look, you've been killing it so far. So I mean, hey, I'm trying to be like you when I grow up. Okay. Other than that, but yeah, some of you guys know that as you can see, my backdrop is different, meaning that I'm in new digs and I'm still trying to get acclimated to the new surroundings and everything else. And for most of you guys that have been catching up with me, sorry if I bumped the mic. Um, I have a son. You guys have been seeing pictures of me post them. Uh, Pictures that I've posted of him. He's 15 months now, and he's given me a whole lot of trouble. I love the boy. You know, Seriously, and yeah, definitely, Amarak. I will catch up with you as soon as I can. So, but uh, simply put, I'm trying to get my channel back up and running, and I have a lot of ideas, and definitely going to get back to the gaming, the movie reviews, trying to talk about some more TV shows because that's been really absent on my channel for some reason. I can't tell you why. Other than that, um, that's just pretty much the simple update as far as going on with your boy, the Fallen Marvel. I'm trying to get things taken care of and be back and start pushing out regular content. And this is the first, this is the initiation of trying to get back into it. So, aside from that, that's pretty much all there really is need to up to date. Now, I'm going to try to do some catching up to do with my movies. And I've had so much to talk about as far as my movies go. So, what this stream essentially is going to be, is me essentially going through the movies that I've seen, and I'm essentially going to review each individual movie that I've seen up to this point, giving my 2 cents. So a lot of it is late reviews, and for the ones that's late reviews, more than likely we're going to get into some spoiler talk. I will warn you beforehand, but for the most part, yeah, that's essentially what's gonna happen. So basically, the structure is going to be me talking about the good, the bad, and I will let you know when the spoiler talk stops. The spoiler talk starts, and then essentially give my grade. Then we'll move on to the next one, and gonna try to structure it in a way to where I could probably chop it up later. So that's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead and get started. So, first movie that I've watched, first big movie that I've watched this year, and at least that I remember talking about, is of course this here, that young Mortal Kombat 2021, and it's really not a whole lot to say about this one. It the Considering how much time has passed, and everyone essentially has moved on. Like everybody just stopped talking about it. If that's any indication of how people feel about this movie, there's that. I don't think there's a whole lot to really say about this movie because I think in hindsight, even if you try to look at it from an objective standpoint, it is what it is. The movie just really wasn't that good. There just was there was a lot of things that could have worked with this movie, but at the same time, it's like whoever was producing this movie at some point is like, I just think that okay, as long as we make it bloody, throw some f-bombs and this, that, and the third, like we should be straight. Because this movie was very bare minimum. And they tried to add extra story elements in there, apart from the original Mortal Kombat mythos and stuff. Where they added the Arcana, they started adding these other character motivations. You got a new character that I feel was probably the most useless character, and that's Cole Young. Look, I actually like Lewis Tan as an actor. I really enjoyed him in Into the Badlands. I enjoyed his one stint on Iron Fist, and I really think had they have given him more to do and given some more just a better motivation, because like his whole thing was he was this character that was always set up to lose. He was the underdog, but at the same time he's the direct descendant of Hanzo, what was it, Hanzo Hasashi, I believe, Scorpion, basically direct descendant of Scorpion, and his whole thing is he just been taking L's. So, they try to give him this backstory with his family being his motivation, like in an event to try to get you to care about him. You couldn't really care about him all that much. Like he was just, he felt useless at the end of the day, which is unfortunate. And unfortunately that showed in the rest of the movie. And that's really all that can be said. So, if I was, if there's just a few things I would have changed. One, I probably would have just stuck with the original story of Hanzo's family getting wiped out, because that's obviously one of the things that drives Scorpion as a character, is that his clan got wiped out. So I would have stuck with that. If you're going to introduce Cole Young, I would have at least maybe started him out as an orphan, maybe have him be... One of the things that popped up was the fact, if they could have done a story to where he was an orphan and then he found out who his father was and wound up being Kenshi, which would have wound up making him Takeda, and then going to this thing where like, okay, maybe he'll have like this tie to the Shirai Ryu later and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. It's things that I really could have worked around, because the way they did it, it just was just no. So that's just how I would have done it. And I mean, look, if you haven't seen the movie by now, I can only assume you don't care. But aside from that, the acting was aside from the Scorpion and Sub-Zero fights, the rest of the fights really weren't that good. There was a lot of cutaways. And typically when there's a lot of cutaways, that usually means that the fighting was not up to par as it should have been. Because seriously, literally the only really good fights in that movie was Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Outside of that, like, the fights were mediocre at best, because like it was too much going on. They were doing too much going on. Story was kind of just meh. And there you can go with that. It's not really so much else to spoil, so I can go ahead and give my score on it. And if I was to score this movie, it's easily a 5 out of 10. And it's kind of sad to say because literally the best introduction of this movie and how they did it, all of that was in the trailers. Like the presentation for it in the trailers was top notch. Like they, if their whole plan was to sell you to get into the to see the movie, the trailer is definitely what it definitely sold you. But unfortunately, the rest of the movie didn't uh, it wasn't up to par. Like it just simply put, it just was not up to par. And that's kind of sad because I really hope this movie really would have knocked it out of the park, and unfortunately, it did not. So uh, that's all I have to say about that. And uh, that's just is what it is. Like MK, if y'all do get a sequel, y'all definitely are going to have to go above and beyond with the sequel to make it that much more interesting. Because as it stands right now, I don't know. I absolutely do not know. So we can go ahead and move on from that, and that's that. So that's my 2 cents on Mortal Kombat. All right, next up, 2021. We had this here. Zack Snyder's Justice League, not to be confused with Justice League of 2017. I think it was. I want to say it was. No, no, no. It was 2016. I think it was 2016. It was something. It was something like that. Yeah. So I didn't get a chance to review this. Obviously, that's why I'm doing it now. That's neither here nor there. I'm talking about it now. Oh man, 4 hours of a Zack Snyder's true vision, or supposedly the vision that he originally wanted for Justice League and whatnot. Man, the best thing I could say about this movie is that you could arguably say that it's definitely better than the original cut by default because it's longer and there's a lot that you could digest from it. But at the same time, it kind of made the movie worse in some aspects. So it's like, look, say what you want about the original cut, but that movie is easier to digest than this movie here. Now, the only thing I could say, which was, it's hard to say what was like really the standout versus anything else, because again, I'm looking at this movie in hindsight. This is after maybe watching it maybe 1.5 times and just looking back on it in hindsight, and it's just, I mean, look, the action set pieces in this movie were good. I definitely say that there was a lot more done in this one to where just like, oh, okay, that's something I kind of wish they would have left in there. But obviously for runtime's sake, I know why they didn't. Because I know one specific thing is the first of all, well, I'll get to that later. Let me just stay on topic. Okay, the Wonder Woman introduction, I would say, was better. The only thing that I would say that I could understand why they cut it down was a bit of the brutality of it, because I'm thinking as cool as the movements that she had in it, because don't get me wrong, it was a dope sequence, but basically what she did to those guys in that little bit of time frame or whatever, they should have been stains on the wall, like straight up, like it because I mean, simply put, she brutally murdered those guys. Now granted, they were extremists and they were going to kill everybody anyway, I get it. And it's just man, whew, It's just one of those things where it's just like, okay, this is his vision. I have to sit here through it, and that's about it. All the only other thing I can say is, man, I slow motion has become a bit jarring for me in films now because of this film, because of Justice League, because it's definitely an overuse of slow motion. It's like this movie literally did not need this much slow motion in it as it did. A lot of those scenes really did not have to be as long as they was. I know it's been like a complete joke, but I mean, simply put, it was funny because I was watching it and my cousin was in the other room. She walked in, saw the part with the Flash, that whole thing with him saving Iris, and she left and came back. She was literally like, "Are y'all still on this scene?" That's why I laughed so hard in my life. But it was literally a situation where it's like, dude, this, where some cases I can get why the slow motion is used, but because you have so much of it, it's just like, okay, could you please turn this thing back to regular speed now? Because like it's like for one, the movie did not have to be 4 hours long. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. The movie didn't have to be 4 hours long. We didn't need like a 2-minute thing of Aquaman like going into the water, because it's just it was just like we didn't need that long of him going into the water, dude. Like it's at the end of the day, it's too much fluff. And which I honestly kind of expected this movie to have a bit more fluff in it to just pad the runtime, because a lot of stuff that was in there wasn't needed. It really wasn't. It's just Snyder wanted to do everything that he wanted to do down to the slightest detail, no matter how pretentious it might be. And it's just, you kind of take it with you leave it, take it or you leave it. This was definitely not for the general audience member. It was not. It's for hardcore Snyder fans who wanted to see his vision out. It's for probably moderate DC fans that were just curious to see what he wanted to do. Some people wound up enjoying it. How it stands up to the test of time, that really depends. The one thing that I will say, this would be like my last thing I say on this movie, and I'm gonna move on. But, and I may be in the minority here, and it's like, again, I have my reasons, but while there were things, like, and they made a whole big thing about it for the past year about Cyborg and Ray Fisher and all of that, and this is my take on it. Okay, as far as the original cut of the movie goes, I kind of think that leaving some things to mystery with his character kind of benefited him in a way, because you still saw someone who was in pain, but is trying to find a way to kind of find a new place in the world. And while you kind of get that in this extended cut, you have other elements of it that kind of leave you scratching your head a little bit, because it's like he wants to be better, but at the same time he's just absolutely just negative a lot of the time, and much of which is due to his animosity towards his father, which again was something that they probably could, it's certain elements that they could have done differently that would have made it more believable, because again, he's in college, Gotham University to be specific, but the motivation that they're using with it is literally high school level stuff. Because again, when you're in college, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or not. If you're in college, dude, I don't know too many people in college that are worried about their parents visiting their games, considering like how much responsibility you have to take in college. Like if you're in high school, it's just like, okay, you live with your parents, your life is just studying and sports and trying to please your parents. When you're in college, you're just trying to be your own man at that point, or your own person. How long he was in college, I don't know. I can only assume maybe sophomore. I don't know, but it's just some things that I just feel that could have just been done with this character, and in some ways, it kind of made his character worse. But because I don't have a lot of time, I'm not going to go into detail. But that might be a topic I might touch on later. With that being said, hello to Jay Dono over on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. Uh, if I was to give a score on this Justice League, because if I remember correctly, when I reviewed the original film, I think I gave it a 6.5 or a 7, I think. I can't remember. I have to look back, but if I remember correctly, I gave it a 6.5 or a 7. More than likely a 6.5, but because whatever. Now, if I'm going to give this one a score, honestly, it's going to vary because it depends on your point of view, but like I can only give this thing maybe half a point more than the original cut, maybe a full point, because there were just a lot of things that bogged that cut down to where it was just like, okay, there's just too much going on here and it wasn't needed. And one can only hope that going forward, maybe Zack Snyder would be able to take some criticism a little bit. I mean, granted, I think like more critics like this extended cut more than the original, but it's like, again, you're not really setting the bar that much higher than what was already out there, because most of what we already seen was still Zack's idea. It was just done differently and whatnot. Like I was expecting to just see a completely different movie, but it really just wound up being a longer version of the same movie, much longer. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Zack Snyder's Justice League, yeah, that's that one. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. All right. So while we're actually on the subject still of Zack Snyder, next movie that I saw this year was this good old Army of the Dead on Netflix, which is essentially Zack Snyder returning to his roots a little bit, because I mean the last zombie movie, I think that was like his first big movie he did was Dawn of the Dead back in, what was it, 2004, something like that. It's been a long time, but yeah, he's kind of returning to his roots a little bit. And with this movie, I will say, first viewing, the movie was fun. There's definitely a fun factor to this film, and I think to that degree it works. Other than that, it's a very, for something that should have been more simplistic, and it's a situation where Zack Snyder, I think, really just tries to do more than what's actually required, because I saw this movie twice. After the first time, it was like, okay, I could have a little bit of fun with this. It was like, okay, fine. But watching it a second time, and I just started seeing a lot of what started becoming wrong with it. And it was just like, dude, like this, it just seemed just so just over. There were just so many just glossed over things as far as story wise and character development, and I can't even really remember a lot of the characters' names, but the Dave Bautista's character, like his daughter, I don't know if it was like his actual daughter or his stepdaughter, whatever the case may be. Dude, she was annoying. Like, it's just like every decision that she made, she should have died. Just about every situation that she was in, she should have died. And I wish she would have died, but she didn't. So, because whatever reason. But it's like I said, you can have a lot of fun with this movie because it's, other than that, it's nothing else really going on there. It's a lot of nonsensical stuff. You got smart zombies, which up to a point was a cool concept, but at the same time, it was kind of like, I ain't, like, what is happening? Because it's like either they're dead or they're not dead, because apparently they can procreate, which kind of defies, like, logic of them being dead in a way, because I don't see how something that's dead can procreate. But apparently these zombies can, and apparently the alpha is picking and choosing who he eats, and just because plot's sake, for some reason, he just saves his food for later. I don't know. Like, it's like I said, it's some aspects of it that's kind of cool, but others where it's just like, okay, what the hell is happening? it's just one of those things that when you look back on it, it's just like, okay, that was a decision that was made. Wow. Okay. But yeah, it's I can't really say it's anything necessarily special. The concept is cool. I don't have any issue with the concept. I think if they would have simplified the concept a little bit more without taking the route that he did or whatever, I think this would have been a much better film, but it's again, it's one of those things you have to take it as it is, because again, Zack Snyder as a filmmaker, he does not take criticism well, and anytime someone has a critique about something, he doubles down on it. And there you go. This is just another example of just as like he just wanted to do his own thing. He doesn't care what anyone says, doesn't care what anyone else says. And while I respect that to a degree, it's just like, dude, you got to be able to take some criticism and find a way to learn from that. That's how you essentially grow as a filmmaker. But Snyder is going to be Snyder regardless of whatever. So that's that. It's like, look, as a human being, I don't have anything particularly against the man. But I'm just saying, like, just as a spectator of art, and you being able, as a product consumer, it's like, hey, you kind of have a say so what works and what doesn't, especially if you're able to look at it from an objective point of view. But it is what it is. So if I was to give Army of the Dead a score out of 10, I'm probably looking, I would say it's probably a 6. I want to say it's a 6. I'm comfortable saying it's a 6. I'm comfortable saying it's a 6. So I know he has a prequel version of it coming out called Army of Thieves. Not really sure necessarily why, and I think I saw something somewhere where they're supposed to be making an anime series with it. I don't know what the hell is going on with this. All I know is just look, the dude is still finding work. Good for him. But I don't know. Like, he's someone. He's a filmmaker that I can't necessarily take seriously a whole lot, just based on the track record. Like, I just can't. It is what it is. That's all I have to say about that. And thank you for listening to me ramble on about Army of the Dead. Thank you. So let's moving on, ladies and gents. So this one really needs no introduction. No introduction at all, ladies and gentlemen. Good old Fast 9. The Fast saga continues and whatever. I don't know exactly how they named it, because after a while the naming convention for these movies just got really weird. So it's Easy go, Fast Nine. Oh man. What can I say that has not been said already since this movie dropped, man? It's like if you're familiar with the Fast series, you know that they have essentially evolved to a certain type of cinema where you just have to suspend this. You have to suspend your belief, or just suspend logic, turn your brain off, this, that, and the third, and you just have to just take it for what it is, and hopefully shove some popcorn in your face, and you be entertained. Uh, I can say that for the most part, I've gotten some entertainment value out of these movies. From the first one uh, up to Hobbs and Shaw and Fast Eight and all that or whatever. Have the movies gotten very silly? Probably like the last three or four of them. Absolutely. It's not to say silly things weren't happening up to that point, but there's just a level of silliness to where the best way I can put it is with this movie is that I have never watched a movie that was so intent on not giving a damn about anything since basically the only type of movies that don't care at all to this degree are essentially parody movies. And it's it's kind of ironic to say because dude, when I watched Fast 9, like again, I've been getting people's hot takes about Fast 9 for days after it came out. And I was literally blown away at how much they did not care. How much they did not give a damn about. They didn't give a damn about any type of logic, any type of anything of making sense. Even by the series' own standards, Fast 9 makes no sense. Even by their own standards, it doesn't make any sense, okay? It's like it's crazy because you look back into, I think it was 2006, and this was like after Too Fast Too Furious came out. I think it might have came out the same year Tokyo Drift came out. Now, I didn't like Tokyo Drift, but the races in that movie were actually kind of dope. Because, I mean, honestly, even before then, I was kind of like really into, I got introduced to Initial D before then. So it was kind of like, some of it was giving me some Initial D vibes at first, but, it just is what it is. But, man, I was floored about how much this movie just did not care about anything it set up. Like, they just doing anything and everything just to see how much they can get away with. And up to this point, they got away with a lot. Now, it's like, look, it's not to say you still can't have fun with it, because that was like the whole purpose of the series in general with this specifically. But, man, it's to the point where like this movie was actually legitimately bad. Like it's not a good movie. It's entertaining. It's just the only thing I could put it that it's literally entertaining. It's, I don't want to say garbage because that's too harsh of a word, but I will say that the story in this movie is garbage. I will say that specifically. Story in Fast 9 was garbage, okay? But just even with that being said, it's just like it's definitely mediocre on its best day. And it's just to the point where it's just like, dude, like this, I just can't with y'all. Like I can't with y'all. Like y'all just, nothing makes sense anymore. Nothing makes sense anymore. Like the action in it didn't make any sense anymore. It's like, forget bringing Han back from the dead. Like literally the action doesn't make any sense. It's just, it's that silly. It's a cartoon at this point. The series has literally become a legit cartoon. just based on what they did in Fast 9 altogether. It's a straight cartoon. Like a lot of it is it's like a lot of it is animated up to this point, but this movie literally just takes the cake completely. Like it's just like, wow, y'all literally just do not give a damn. They literally don't, man. It's wild, man. I don't know. Like I'm tapped out. I officially tap out of this series. If I do manage to see the part 1 and part 2 of Fast 10 FX, whatever the hell they're gonna call it, I may actually just wait till watch it on video, because I mean I literally had to ingest alcohol just to make sure that I was entertained with Fast 9, because I already knew some things were gonna be like, dude, come on, just come on, man. That's how I felt. So with that being said, if I'm, you know what, just before I get to score, I have to mention this one thing. Okay, Tyrese's character Roman, and this is kind of a spoiler. Uh, there was a point at the beginning where he was surrounded by, it had to be soldiers in double digits, had to be, because I think they were in they were somewhere, I think, in Central or South America, I think. And he was surrounded by a armed militia that they got ambushed by. It had to have been at least eight guys with automatic weapons, AKs, I guess. And he was essentially surrounded, like literally in essentially what was basically a kill box. If you really think about it, like he was surrounded like above and on level, and he just said, like, you know what, if I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna go out shooting. And he picks up the AK, and he goes out and lets everybody have it and whatever. This man managed to not only survive, but didn't get shot once. And he killed everybody else. I'm like, dude, Roman in that particular part was equivalent to a Call of Duty hacker, okay? Like that, I'm just like, bro, there's no way in the world you should have survived that. Like it's just like, bro, y'all. And again, this is at the beginning of the movie. This is like about 15, 20 minutes in already, okay? So it's just, wow. Anyway, if I'm gonna give that movie a score, that's a 5.5. That's a 5.5 out of me. I have no intention of ever watching this movie again. Like, based on just how much they just don't care. It's like if the movie was a parody, it's like, okay, I could give it a pass, but it's not. It's a continuation of a series they set up. You know, it's. Oh boy, yeah, that's about all I got to say about Fast 9. So that's yeah, that's all I have to say about that, ladies and gents. So let's move it on. Okay, so in more recent events, we are going to go into, of course, the return to the MCU in theaters. Miss Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, finally dropped on July 9th. And I had the pleasure of finally going back to the theaters to see it. I think for the most part, what this movie does good. It does a good job, I think, setting the tone, because I think like everybody pretty much confirmed that it takes place immediately after Civil War. So it's just some things that, you know, happens with her, and she kind of gets pulled back in with her Red Room roots, which that's something I think a lot of people were kind of interested in, because people were interested in the character. I mean, Black Widow, I think at the core, is a really cool character, and it sucks that it took this long for them to be able to do it, but I think for what they did, the movie was fine. I would say that the movie, it's not great, but you could sit and watch and have a good time with it based on the story that they were telling. Um, uh, Florence Pugh as Yelena, who in the comic books is the, well, I think like the other like main Black Widow character, like the other character who kind of fulfilled the role. Florence Pugh was great in this movie. I think I feel I really felt for her character, based on what they set up with the, I guess like the newer version of the Red Room. According to this, like she was good. David Harbour I thought was entertaining, but I kind of liked him the least in this movie. It's not to say that he did a bad job, because it was a sense of of him having a lot of fun with it, but at the same time, I just think that they kind of buffoon him a little too much, to the point where it kind of put me off of him a little bit. But it's like I said, I like David Harbour. I think he's a good actor. I like this present. I like what he did with it. He worked good for what he had. Like he did good with what they gave him, and I just wish they would have given him more. But I see what they were doing as far as this movie, because even though obviously Scarlett Johansson, she's going to be the she has the name, so she has the biggest name on the marquee, and but even with that being said, the movie is literally trying it is the movie is a launching pad for Yelena, because as we know, if you saw Endgame, Natasha sacrifices herself, so she's gone. So now we're introduced to Yelena, and now we're going to see how she's going to fit in the story, on the way, whatever that they have planned coming forward. So like the movie's essentially helping setting her up, and then her essentially rekindling her relationship with Natasha based on their origins, because they were raised as sisters for a point in time, and some things happen, they end up in the Red Room, and the rest is history basically. But I will say, for specifically that beginning, the very opening scene, like the opening sequence of that movie, was really well done. I only wish that same consistency was done throughout the rest of the film, but nonetheless, very good introduction. So the most controversial thing, I think, is with Taskmaster character. Now, there are some things that were done differently in this movie with that character. Some people don't like it. Actually, quite a few people don't like it, because a lot of people are needless to say, people are getting they're getting, Fant Four Stick, Doctor Doom, uh, X-Men Origins Wolverine, Deadpool vibes and whatnot. And personally, I don't think it was that bad, because one of the things that I'm able to do when going to the movies, that like, look, I look at the movie. Granted, I'm a comic book reader. I understand where these characters come from and how they stack up and so on and so forth. But I go into the movies watching them expecting things to be different. The thing is, I treat the movies like an alternate universe. So if you're able to do that, and then you look at this, how they structured or whatever, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For me, I think it works for the most part. I just think it's some things that they don't necessarily fully follow through on, because sometimes, I don't know. It's like, again, I can't go into every MCU movie thinking it's going to be Winter Soldier or Infinity War or Endgame, or hell, even the original Avengers. If I do that, I'm going to be upset most of the time anyway. But with that being said, I honestly don't think it was a situation where I just don't feel it to be a situation to get like upset about. Like I get being a fan of Taskmaster. I think I honestly think he's an interesting character. I like his move set more than anything else. Like a muscle memory move set, that's dope. I mean, you can't really that's a dope power set. And I think they display that really well in this movie. Now, one of the things I say that you can gripe about, I think, is that this movie does take elements of things that MCU has already done, and then they just basically do it for Widow. Now, granted, you can't even just blame MCU. A lot of movies have taken elements from each other and just kind of redoing it in a different way. Fortunately, this movie is one of those things that does that, but it's not to say that the movie is terrible or anything like that. I think the movie is serviceable. It does what it's supposed to do. It launches newer characters that are still around, and one that is going to have some notable things going on in future MCU projects. So, with that being said, I give this as far as me scoring this movie, uh, I'd give it a 7. I give the movie. I'm giving the movie a solid 7. It's not a great movie, but I do think it's good and it's serviceable. It could have been better. It definitely could have been better, but I like Scarlett and Florence's performances in this. They definitely shine. Like Florence definitely shines in this movie, so she's definitely the highlight. I like how they were able to display Taskmaster's. Well, technically, the character wasn't called Taskmaster, so like, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Just really quick before we move on, just like a little bit of spoiler talk. But just like I said, I think the chemistry between Florence and Scarlett was really good. Introducing a new character, I think, was helpful, and it's just like, again, it's like a next few of the movies I think are going to be launchpad movies, because like, you know, they're gonna have to like introduce like, you know, newer characters, so on and so forth, blah blah blah. You know, same thing. You know, you read enough comic books and knowing like how like certain things, you know, like, oh, they're introducing this character, how they playing this, and whatever. So, but really quick, spoiler talk, Taskmaster. So the character is not specifically called Taskmaster. It's a Taskmaster protocol. Okay? So keep that in mind. So the idea was apparently that if they, again, kind of come in full circle, Dreykov's daughter, and who's Antonia, and you guys know like the original character's name, I think was it was Tony. I can't remember the last name. But I know it's like original name. You know what? I'll look it up right now. I'm not going to be that person because I want to get it right. Let me see. Taskmaster. My man's name, Anthony Tony Masters. Tony Masters, Anthony Masters, whichever one. Tony, Anthony, same thing. So, but Antonia Dreykov, I guess. So basically, it's revealed that in order for Natasha to solidify her defection to S.H.I.E.L.D., she had to take out Dreykov, and she used her then very young daughter to do it. And that was kind of grim. I mean, basically, in order to assassinate him, basically had to kill his daughter, who was innocent at the time. But Dreykov, who was basically the shadow, the shadow puppet master behind the Red Room, he apparently comes up with a protocol and essentially turns his daughter into a weapon, a la the Taskmaster protocol. So it was an interesting twist. I kind of halfway expected that to happen because we're dealing mostly with the Red Room, and if you're dealing with the Red Room and you have all of these widows, you don't really need an extra hired mercenary. You literally have an army of mercenaries, like, under your control. So, with Taskmaster being the figure, the the callback, the motif, whatever you want to call it, of Taskmaster being in this movie, you weren't going to get like full Anthony Masters, Tony Masters, Taskmaster in this. So, but with that being said, the idea of it survives this movie, so it could be something we see later on. That's my take on it. There you go. Boom, bam. All right. So that takes care of that. Now we're going to go on to the final movie that now I know there's one that I'm missing, but you know, I could talk about it really quick, just really quick, and that's was it Godzilla versus Kong, King of the Monsters, or what was it called? Or was it just Kong versus Godzilla? No, Godzilla versus Kong. I'm sorry. So just Godzilla versus Kong. That's all. That's all we needed. So I was actually entertained by that movie. As crazy as it was, but it's a kaiju movie. You don't really expect a whole lot of craziness. Look, I'm just saying, you can't go into a kaiju movie not expecting craziness, is what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, like I said, the bouts that we did get between Godzilla and Kong, even though it really seems like, with the exception of one point in time, Godzilla pretty much had the advantage. And he definitely showed he had the advantage before the end of the movie. But, I mean, like Godzilla, King of the Monsters, you know, it's the less human element that's in the movie, the better. But of course, because we have to have that human element, that kind of bogs the movie down some. And it's going to happen. Just about like anything. It's like the only exception to that rule was the first Pacific Rim, if we're going to be honest about it. That movie was the only exception to the rule. But the fights in Godzilla vs. Kong, I thought were pretty cool. I was entertained by it. You know, I expected the humans to be stupid. But overall, it was interesting how they did it. It'd be interesting to see, like, because you know they're gonna do another one. But like, I'm kind of interested to see if Kong will manage to get some get back, which more than likely won't happen. But you know, it's one of those things where you just kind of be like, okay, we'll see if they manage to get some get back for this character. But it's one of those things that remains to be seen. But overall, I think I give Godzilla vs. Kong, as far as the score, it's a 7.5. I give it a 7.5 just for entertainment value. Story wise, really wasn't much there. The whole thing was like, okay, we're setting up. The whole point is setting up for Godzilla to fight Kong. That's the whole point. You get there, and they do what they got to do, even though they tried to give Kong a bit of a handicap. But I mean, it's just like, it would have been interesting if he was roaming around like the rest of the kaiju were, but he wasn't. He was just like stuck on the island and however they wanted to do. But I mean, look, you can make the argument. I don't know, but I mean, we'll see. We'll just see. But yeah, that's all I got to say about Godzilla vs. Kong. So, thank you very much for that. Now for the grand finale of Movie Talk 2021, the newly released. Oh nope, wrong thing. Hold on, wait. Oh, I messed up the button. Excuse me. I got to get myself right. Hold on. I did not do it right. Oops. Okay, hang on. Hang on, ladies and gentlemen. Came back and I made my first boo-boo. All right. Well, you can kind of see it there now, but yeah. This bad boy here. Old Space Jam, New Legacy. which has people so divided right now. Absolutely so divided. Um, yeah, guys. I, I mean, I'm going to address a few things going toward this, but I'm going to say this. There are elements in this movie that I think could have been more compelling enough had they kind of followed it through. Because if you've seen the trailers, you know it's going to be like, it's like this thing where LeBron has to help his son because he gets swallowed into the digital verse or whatever the case may be. And it's just that part of it. I think that was probably the better movie, dealing with his family and his son and all that kind of stuff or whatever. Like, and I knew they have to eventually go to the, like, the zany part of it, but that part of it was fine. And there are aspects of it that can be fun. Like, it's because I will say my piece about it once I get to the end, as far as comparing it to the first one, whatever, and some other things. But we're just talking about the movie itself right now. Now, up to that point, and granted, you could, I mean, talk about LeBron's acting or whatever. Is just like, look, he's an athlete. You don't expect like a lot of good acting out of him. Like, I wasn't about to, so that's a given. However, the thing, the way they set up like some things, they're kind of just there, and it's one of those things where, when you go into those movies and they have something that's set up without much setup, and it's just like, hey, just accept it. But this is like one of those questions where, like, they just kind of just set up something, and like no one dares like just beg the question, like, how the hell, And this movie is that, like, this is one of those things where they set up something that they just want you to accept, but at the same time it's like, how in the hell, like, please explain this to me. But other than that, it's like, once it gets into the serververse, basically it's just like anything and everything kind of just starts happening, and it's there, it's animated, it's loud, it's bright. That's about all you can really say, because it's just part of my issue with this is that I don't understand why this movie had to be 2 hours. Like, this movie did not have to be 2 hours. Like, it's too long. Like, it's definitely too long. Like, this movie could have easily been like about like an hour and a half, hour and 25 minutes, because there's not a whole lot you have to do in a movie with this concept. Like, it's like, the simpler you keep it, the better. But the problem is that they couldn't keep the movie as simple as they thought they could. Because it just gets to the point where I'm just like, bruh, like, what? Who? Why did they make this movie? It's just, and the thing is that, like, I asked myself, why did they make this movie? But I know exactly why they made this movie. Okay, they made it as a giant commercial for Warner Brothers. That's exactly what this was. That is my main issue with this movie, is that the movie was a big ass commercial for Warner Brothers. That's my biggest issue with this film. It's like, with all the family stuff and, whatever, that was like compelling enough. You've seen enough family movies or whatever, it's like, okay, when there's like, a little bit of tension between family and all that stuff or whatever, it's compelling enough to where it's like, okay, let's see how this gets resolved. But man, it's like, and like, hey, my boy Q Reviews, He's in the chat saying it right now. It's like, dude, they literally did everything except had a big ass banner that said sign up for HBO Max today. All right, that's literally the goal of this movie. Was it's like let's basically try to flex all of our Warner Brothers properties in one thing and go from there, and that's the movie. And that's honestly my biggest issue with it, man. Like, it's like the game. It's like even when it finally got to the basketball game. Now, this is something I've actually thought was kind of strange, because when they go through when LeBron is with Bugs and they go through the whole thing with trying to find all the Looney Tunes to get the team together or whatever, even though LeBron's trying to recruit Superman and Iron Giant and King Kong for the team or whatever, that's already trying to make a super team. But it's like when they get through all of that and they make it back to Toontown, it's like they had an hour left. If I remember correctly, they had like an hour before the game. But then like a few minutes into the scene, they had like 10 seconds. Like, I don't know if I counted that wrong, or I have to look back when I get a chance, but I could have swore that they had an hour when they got back to the Toon World. So it's just the main thing that works against this movie is that it's a big ass commercial. Some other stuff works. Don Cheadle has a lot of fun in it. I think he's probably the brightest spot in this movie, because he's obviously taking what he has and he's having as much fun with it as he possibly can. Are some of the jokes and some of the stuff that they use or whatever dated? Very much yes. Like, they use very dated jokes in here to where it's just like they don't land. It's like that's kind of part of the problem. Like, look, the main good thing about it is that, like, there's some stakes that they set up to where it's like, okay, I get it. Then once they get past that, then it's just like, hey, HBO Max, Nike, Warner Brothers. It's like, dude, it's like they self-reference themselves a lot in this movie. And it's like, that's what kind of just, it's like, dude, like, you guys are just, it's like, again, it's a lot of things were just dated even for this. Like, it's like in Granny, they literally had Granny saying like stuff that like they literally like saying stuff that was like dated like 10 years ago, which is it's just like, bro. And I don't even get me started on like the game itself. Like, look, the basketball game, while visually, I'll say it's visually appealing because it's very much a video game type of basketball. They're trying to go arcade basketball game style with that final game. But it's the crazy thing is that, like, early in the movie, they were supposed to kind of sort of explain how the rules of the game work, but they never go through the rules. They just get to the point where it just starts glitching out, and that just kind of becomes part of the story. So, like, when the game is happening, you don't know how any of these damn rules work. It's like it's like if they took it's like they took elements from NBA Street and NBA Jam, and then they did like a hodgepodge and kind of just made a game where the rules weren't even completely finished. Like, that's basically what it was, and it just kind of just became like, dude, what is this game? What is this basketball game? I don't understand what is happening. So it's like, okay, look, a kid that doesn't know any better would easily be entertained by this. That's a given, but that's not really saying a whole lot. So I'm going to give my score really quick, and then I'm going to address a couple of things before I wrap up. But if I was to give this movie a score, and this is as a whole, it's just like, just everything I explained as a whole is just like, not saying like because it looked better and whatever the case would be, like, I objectively have to give this movie a. I'm gonna have to get a movie a 4.5, man. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's even for like I'm going to explain why, but like for me, this movie gets a 4.5, dude. Like, it's very bare minimum, and it's just a big commercial, and it supersedes the good family aspect of it that it could have completely have been. But because a majority of the movie was meant to sell you something, to me, like, that kind of just brings the whole quality of the movie down, because like it's just it's too much advertisement. It's way too much advertisement, and that's initially what brings the movie down. So it gets a 4.5 for me out of 10. Now, in comparison, and we're going to get into specifics before we wrap up. Now, comparing this to the first movie, and you can a lot of times you have to really think about like the time, the times when things come out and why they seem to work so well in hindsight. Because one of the things about this Space Jam movie is that the test of time will be very telling about it. That's going to be what essentially says, okay, this movie was understood or not. Because even now, the original movie is kind of comes as a movie that was misunderstood at the time. But when you kind of go back in the mid late 90s, for when the because the original Space Jam came out in 96. And you have to think about that time. At that time, the popularity of Looney Tunes was still hot. And of course, the Michael Jordan brand was still hot. The NBA in general was just like peak as you could possibly get for the most part. You know, as far as you see it, it's just like not even just Jordan, but it's like literally like a gang of athletes in the 90s that you could instantly recognize. It was like, hey, I know that dude. You know, it's like, hey, because like, you know, a lot of athletes during that time, and you don't really see it as much now, like outside of LeBron, because LeBron does a lot of charity work and stuff with with kids and all that, whatever. You got a handful of other athletes that do it too. But the 90s, it's like you saw athletes everywhere. It's just like, look, for better or worse, Shaq, dude gave us rap albums, he gave us a video game, and gave us a kids movie. A couple of kids movies. They weren't good, but he gave them to us, okay? So it's like, again, you can name off guys like, again, Larry Johnson, Patrick Union, Chris Mullin, Charles Barkley, Sean Kemp, John Starks. The list goes on. Like, you knew who those guys were, regardless of what medium you saw them in. So when you look at the original Space Jam, it's like the movie is already selling itself on Michael Jordan, and it's selling itself on the Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, the whole nine. That's all that movie needed to sell you on. It was Michael Jordan playing with the Looney Tunes. That's it. That's all it needed to sell you on. And if you look at the movie objectively, no, it's not a great movie. It's definitely a nostalgic movie. But it's a movie that just has the right, it had the charm to it. See, the thing is that like you could have a mediocre movie, but if there's enough charm there, it can stand the test of time. Cause that's why I don't really get the arguments that they make now, because to me, like, it really does seem like social media kind of like ruins a lot of things. But this is why I don't necessarily care for the argument where they care to say like, oh, you have like people who's a certain age arguing about kids movies, such as, because it's like, look, I can't speak for the people that like taking it too far, especially the MJ versus LeBron enthusiasts, and that's about as equivalent to Superman versus Goku, like on like just on top of each other. It's just like, okay, here we go with that. See, but just what I'm getting at is just like at the end of the day, this movie was not. It's like the current Space Jam was not as charming as it thought it was. It had its moments. It had some moments, but overall, that movie was nowhere near as charming as it thinks it is. That's one of the reasons why you look back at the original Space Jam and just like, yes, you're nostalgic. You know, it takes you back to being a kid. It's like, and you know, it's one of those things where just like the charm goes a long way. Even with that being said, there are really good kids movies that they make that doesn't have to do the bare minimum with kids. You look at a lot of our stuff growing up as kids or whatever, a lot of stuff still stands the test of time. Because if you're using that logic where like it's not made for you, I mean, look, the Amazing World of Gumball wasn't made for me either, but that was a great series, okay? Because it was genuinely well made. It was genuinely good. So you can't really use that excuse. If a movie is bad, it's bad. If it's a movie is good, it's good. You can't use the demographic to necessarily say whether something should be objectively looked at as good or bad. So that's just how I look at it, and that's why I feel like just think reasonably. Doesn't matter how old you are, or whatever. You can still look at something and say, like, hey, this movie wasn't good. I mean, I look because I'm saying it's like, look, absolutely not. Not saying it had to be, but you would at least like it to be good on all fronts to where the movie doesn't feel like it has to sell you something. So it's like you look at the Smurfs. The Smurfs, all of those movies weren't good. And part of the problem was those movies was basically trying to product place Sony products in it. Again, it's using something that we grew up on, people in our generation grew up on, to have your kids watching, and it was like, hey, you see those Sony products in there? That's just how I look at it. It's like when they kind of use stuff or whatever specifically to sell you shit, that brings the quality of the movie down because there could have been a whole lot more they could have used. Because it's just like, look, even when LeBron first goes into the Toon world, I thought it was one thing that they did clever when he first landed, but then they kind of ruined it with advertisement. Because you know how when cartoons fall, and this is kind of a bit of a spoiler, but you know how when cartoons fall and it's like a big explosion when they go through the ground and it's like this big dust cloud that pops up? When LeBron fell, the dust cloud was basically in the shape of a ball going into a hoop. And I was like, okay. That's clever. That's clever. But then you look at the impact he makes in the ground and it's a Nike swoosh. And I'm like, okay, you couldn't just let that one go. It could have just been his body, but no, he makes a Nike swoosh imprint in the ground. I'm like, it's like this movie stay trying to sell you shit. So it's just, man, look, objectively, the movie ain't good. I would say that like objectively the movie is just bad because it spends more time trying to sell you something rather than actually trying to be a charming family movie. And that's why I think looking back on the original one, if I was to objectively look at the original one, I'd give the original one probably a 6.5. But because it has that charm, that carries it. Like it carries it. So that's the it. No, I'm not saying they don't. I'm not saying the first one doesn't try to sell us stuff, but it's not as prevalent. That's the thing. It's not as prevalent trying to sell us shit. Like so, it's not as prevalent. It's like it's not the whole. It's not like the main course of the first one. So it's just like, look, I know like stuff that's designed for us is gonna try to sell us something. It kind of sucks that they do, but you know, it's like a lot of movies that we grow up liking is gonna have product placement in it. It's fine. Sometimes it's a little bit more obligatory than it should be, but it's just one of those things where, you know, it's hot takes. Everybody has a hot take. And a lot of people's hot takes about this new Space Jam is that it's not really that great of a movie. And objectively, you can look at it and say, like, yeah, this movie really wasn't. And like I said, we'll see what the test of time says. because the test of time is going to be the true revealer of whether or not something is going to be good or not. Because like, look, I was a fan of Super Mario Brothers when it first came out in '93. I was 8 at the time. I didn't know any better. I grew up looking at that movie and I'm like, oh yeah, this movie's bad. This movie is bad. It's like even the nostalgia passes I try to give it, it's like I can't see anything redeeming about that movie. That movie was bad, okay? And it's I think, and the thing is, like, certain things are just product of a time that you can't replicate. And I think that's where the divide comes. It's like when you try to replicate something that worked back then, and again, this is over 20 years. I think it's been what, 25? 25 years. It's 25 years. And it's like, I don't know. I just wish they would have really focused so much on really just trying to make the movie more charming and a little bit more compelling versus trying to rely on like one. I'm assuming it's like this was a Warner Brothers idea, and it was like, hey, you're going to advertise everything in here that we own as much as possible, and that's where it kind of falls off for me. So this has nothing to do with who was a better athlete, Michael Jordan or LeBron James or whatever. Like, that argument has nothing to do with the movie. We're looking at these movies as movies. How do they stack up? And outside of the new one looking better and having, it has its moments. The movie has its moments, but it's like, look, a kid will like it if they don't know any better. Whether they grow up still liking this movie, looking back on it, that remains to be seen. So we'll see. So, that's all I have to say about Space Jam: A New Legacy. And, well, that was fun. It's been a while since I did one of these, So, guys, everybody who did manage to leave a message and stuff, my boy Q Reviews, my younger brother KJ Blue Avenger, my boy Amarok, who else? I'm trying to not my friends, my boy Stephen Petty, and Jay Dono over on YouTube. Appreciate you stopping through and watching my stream. And this will hopefully be one of many I will start doing because, man, I'm out of practice and I have so much to catch up on. I might do another live stream talking about some of the TV shows that I've been seeing. Most of the, well, yeah, it's a good portion of TV shows that I saw the past year that I definitely want to talk about. And plus, I want to start talking more about TV shows on this channel. So we'll see. So with that being said, I hope everyone has a really good time. Just, if you ain't seen Space Jam yet or whatever, or any other movies I mentioned or whatever, hopefully you have a better experience out of them for the ones I didn't really care much for. It's like I said, test of time will be the true revealer to everything else. So if you haven't yet, you can go ahead and follow, subscribe, leave a comment, like, share, all that wonderful stuff. It helps me out. I'd always appreciate it. And yeah, just wanted to say please and thank you. Well, yeah, please and thank you. And I appreciate you. So keep following my advice to go nerd, but nerd responsibly. And until next time, your friendly neighborhood blurred, the Fall of Marvel. I will see you guys later on. You guys take care. Be safe out there because COVID is still a thing. All right. Peace and love. I'm out.